Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday morning's thought for today. If you've been with us this week so far, we're spending some time in Psalm 46 before we go back to Mark's Gospel chapter 1 on Sunday. And we've been looking really at bits and pieces to do with the Psalm that the moderator spoke on Sunday, but also bits and pieces that we maybe have noticed as we read through the Psalm for ourselves. And this morning I want to just look at a picture of contrasts that is shown to us certainly in the first half of the Psalm. I think it's quite interesting because if we read the first part of the Psalm, it talks about obviously God being our refuge in verse 1 and strength and very present help in time of trouble. And then the psalmist goes on in verses 2 and 3 to talk about this scene of chaos where he talks about, therefore we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though the waters foam and roar, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. This whole idea of the sea becoming a really horrible place because the mountains are falling into it. The sea itself is churning, and there's a sense of great upset within the ocean. And then we move into verse 4. And verse 4 seems to bring a very different picture. We've just moved from this crazy picture of chaos to a picture of calm and still, where he says there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. In other words, in Jerusalem, there is this river, and the streams from the river gladden the city. And we also read about the New Jerusalem and the stream there, and this picture of tranquility and peace. So we've moved really from a sense of chaos to a sense of peace. The world around us is going crazy. Things are falling apart. The sea itself is an uproar. But within God's holy city, where God himself is, there's this picture of calmness and peace. And then we read on, God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. And this idea of the new day, this idea of God being in control, this wonderful picture of God still looking after his people, still loving them, still caring for them and providing for them. Then we read verse 6 and 7, the nations rage, the kingdoms totter, he utters his voice, the earth melts. Incredible thought, isn't it? We've been reading about the tottering of mountains, the mountains unstable, the earth giving way. And yet we read here that the nations rage, the kingdoms totter, he utters his voice, the earth melts. Everywhere is falling apart, everywhere is tottering, but there's this sense of stability with God. There's this idea that it doesn't matter what's going on in the world around, God in his place with his people, things are still okay. God is still in control. God will not be moved. God's voice that spoke creation into existence also speaks here. We read, he utters his voice and the earth melts. Now what a strange verb to use, this idea of melting. The earth melting, not the earth crumbling or falling or cracking or being torn apart, but the idea of the earth melting, just falling away, just dissolving before God into nothing. God speaks through the power of his word. But there's this wonderful contrast between the world around us that is in chaos and that sense of peace within the presence of God. Where God is, there is peace forevermore. And it's beautiful to think about this because it's topsy-turvy, isn't it? We live in the world. At the moment, the world is a crazy place because of COVID. But we also have this peace and this tranquility and this calmness, knowing God to be at the center of our lives, or we should do, because God has given himself to us through his word and through the Holy Spirit. But there's also this idea that what happens in the world and what happens with God are very often very different. There's this idea that the world is upside down and with God everything is right. And yet when Jesus came, Jesus gave us, in a sense, an upside down view of the world. The world shows us one way of doing things. In fact, J.B. Phillips in his translation in Romans says, do not let the world squeeze you into its mold, because the world says this is how we do things. This is the norm. And yet Jesus came and turned all that upside down. Jesus came as king, but yet washed his disciples' feet. Jesus talked about the idea of the first being last and the last being first. There's this whole upside down kingdom that Jesus gave us. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the world around us, even if it looks like this is how things are, this is the norm, this is life. Within God's will for us, things are different, because there is a peace that Paul talked about that passes understanding. And so when the world goes crazy around us, we should know a God who is in control, a God who gives us that peace, a God who still utters his words, and the earth responds to them. A God who, should he wishes, could click his fingers, could say one word, and COVID would vanish from this planet. And that's our prayer. But yet in the meantime, while we wait for that to happen, we have work to do. We have witness to show people that we are at peace because we have God at the centre of our lives. In this topsy-turvy world, I encourage you to not fit into the world around you, not to be drawn into all the conspiracy theories and all that are going on at the moment, but to look to God and in him find your peace and know that he is at the centre of your life. Thanks for being with me this morning. Hopefully you'll come and join us tonight at our Zoom prayer meeting. It's been continuing the whole way through the whole lockdown and through the summer, etc. And it's continuing to go on now. Still getting good numbers, but there are plenty of spaces there for anyone else who wants to join us. And we'd love to see you there 7:30 tonight in Zoom. The link will be posted later. Thanks for being with me this morning. See you tomorrow. God bless.